The Bricks and Minifigs situation is crazy, and part of the reason that it's such a slow motion train wreck, except it's not slow motion, it's a full motion train wreck that's just taking forever, is driven by the fact that some players at the center don't seem to care about anything other than winning every individual battle. So Brandon Best, Joshua Johnson, and the McNeff brothers, who are the CEO and COO of BAM Franchise Inc., seem to care greatly about winning every battle and not at all about consistency between, which, when you look at the meta, which is what the internet is looking at, shows them as liars. For example, Joshua Johnson claiming to Coffeezilla there were only 2 to 3 layaways when he took over the store, but allegedly in a police report, which I have seen replicated, claiming that there were a bunch of layaways when he took over the store to police in Oregon. Ooh, not great. Same with the whole U-Haul situation. There are many, many things which are too complicated to explain to people who have not followed the story, but trust me, you have 4 people who look like liars. But if you only look at any one interaction, they're winning a lot of them. It is more reasonable to say this businessman didn't steal a bunch of Legos and is being wrongfully accused by a crazy YouTuber than it is to say he committed a bunch of weird conspiracies for a handful of Lego bricks. Right? That's the reason we've seen so many of the reactions, or at least part of the reason we've seen so many of the reactions of the players in the story. They look like idiots when you know the full meta, but the goal is to win any one game. This is a thing that a lot of people do, and unfortunately it works for them. There's a really great speech given by Oliver Wendell Holmes called The Path of the Law. And in it, he discusses the idea that law cannot be viewed by how it's supposed to work, but it must be viewed through the lens of a bad man who is only concerned with being forced to pay money or go to prison. He doesn't care what the law is intended to do or what the law says by its black letter. He cares about consequences to himself. So let me give an example. We're going to go Texas employment law for this one. And if you practice employment law in a different state, before you leave a comment and tell me I'm misexplaining something, look up how Texas works. Your state is probably quite different. Let's imagine someone is a manager at a store. We're not going to say Bricks and Minifigs, but it could be. They're a manager at a store, and for easy math, they make $2,500 every 2 weeks. At one point, their boss, the owner of the store, tells them, hey, listen, we're switching over to a new accounting system. You're going to miss 1 paycheck. Okay, fine. They're going to make it up on the next one, is what they've been told. 2 weeks goes by. There's a second paycheck missed, and the person comes in and says, hey, boss, where's my money? You owe me $5,000. At which point they are handed a letter that says they were fired 4 weeks ago, and police are called. Police are shown that letter. Police, believing that the person was fired and showed up to work, escort them off the property and ban them there. Now, has a crime been committed? Yes, by the owner. Is anyone going to investigate that? Unlikely. So the person who used to manage the store calls lawyers, and lawyers tell them, effectively, we can't really recover this type of money in damages less than $20,000. But what you can do is send a litigation hold request demanding all of the footage be stored and then file a complaint with the Texas Workforce Commission. This will be said with a little bit of an eye roll because the Texas Workforce Commission is quite ineffective in a lot of ways. Attorneys that I've spoken to don't seem to respect it very much. It's sort of like entering a lottery on the hopes of recovering money that you are owed. Let's say the same unethical business owners continue their unethical business practice, but this time crushing bureaucracy slows everything down. Instead of it taking the 21 days advertised on the Texas Workforce Commission website, it takes 7 months before an investigator even looks at the case. At that point, they are shown a notice from police trespassing this person and a fraudulent or at least backdated document claiming that the person who filed the complaint was fired 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks before they have claimed that they are owed this money, these 2 pay periods, these $5,000. Okay, well, the person who filed the claim has an opportunity to appeal, so they appeal to a hearing officer. There are 38 of them for all of the Texas Workforce Commission, and they are paid about half of what a lawyer with their experience. They do have to be licensed or at least have gone through law school. They are unable to practice law while they are employed as a hearing officer, and they must have 5 years of experience, meaning when they make $60,000 to $70,000, that is little bit around half of what the median for attorneys with their experience would make. These are not necessarily the best and brightest legal minds for that reason. I don't want to say people are their income, but when you choose a job where the primary perk is that it's easy and you have minimal oversight and sacrifice a huge amount of earning potential in exchange for no real cultural glory and no real cause drive like you would if you worked for the ACLU or SPCA, there is a reason to believe you're not necessarily dealing with the most driven legal minds. Okay, 7 months later, the hearing occurs. And the old boss shows up and says, well, we trespassed the man. We sent him this, blah, blah, blah. And the person who filed the claim is sitting there like, I sent a request for a subpoena. You, hearing officer, you denied my subpoena request. I showed you the litigation hold notice. We could look at the footage right now if they had it and prove I worked there. And the hearing officer says, yeah, but I can't make an ex parte decision. We're going to have this hearing as normal. And if I think that it merits it, I will grant that subpoena request. 2 weeks later, a letter arrives in the mail. The former manager gets a letter stating flatly they are not owed any money, but they have a right to appeal, except the Texas Workforce Commission on Appeals is not actively reviewing cases. And when they again start, they might have multi-years of backlog, meaning instead of it taking 21 days to get the money that they were owed, it will be at least a few years before a appeals commission even reviews a bad decision. If the appeals commission takes the side of either, someone can appeal that to court. By the time that goes to court, it might have been 5 years, over $5,000. And the company has probably moved on to a new lease. They've certainly filed a new LLC. This is a judgment-proof debt, totally uncollectible. Will anyone get in trouble for lying? Will anyone get in trouble for a false police report? Probably not. Sometimes people do. Good people look at the law as it's supposed to work and say, I can't just file a false police report in order to get out of paying $5,000. That risks me going to jail. The bad man says my chance of going to jail is well under 1%. It's worth a risk of 1% chance of even being charged with something, and then being able to fight it later, claim a mistake, claim an error, claim a miscommunication, and get out of consequences in order to save $5,000. There are people who do this, and this is the personality profile we are seeing, I think, with BAM Franchise, Inc., Joshua Johnson, and Brandon Best. And a very merry fuck you all from me.